Blind Dog was ready to give up, until this cat did something unbelievable. A chilly autumn morning dawned at the Helen Woodward Animal Center in Rancho Santa Fe, California, where volunteers bustled around rows of kennels. Amid the bustle, one scruffy gray dog named Toby shivered in the corner of a pen, his unseeing eyes clouded and distant. Abandoned and frightened, Toby had nearly lost the will to carry on. Yet in the quiet of dawn, fate introduced an unlikely friend, a sleek, curious cat named Willow. And on that day, through a single extraordinary act, she changed Toby's life forever. Little did anyone know their bond would spark a tale of resilience, redemption, and hope. Toby's earliest memories were filled with shapes and light, before everything faded into darkness. He remembered warm hands petting him, the glow of sunshine through a window, and the laughter of children. Then, one day, an illness took his sight. He wasn't more than a year old when the world became an impenetrable black veil. Suddenly, he found himself in a strange house, one without the comforting warmth of the children's laughter. His owners, unsure how to handle a blind dog, surrendered him to a local shelter. The shelter workers did their best. They fed him, gave him a bed in a corner away from the chaotic barking of the other dogs, and administered basic medical attention. However, Toby's gentle soul withered under the constant stress and unpredictability of his environment. He was routinely passed over by adopters who sought puppies with bright, eager eyes. Weeks stretched into months, and Toby was labeled a special needs dog, making his chance of adoption even slimmer. When the shelter's limited resources began to dwindle, Toby was transferred to the Helen Woodward Animal Center in Rancho Santa Fe, California, a reputable place known for rescuing animals with medical or behavioral challenges. Tucked into a kennel with fresh bedding, Toby curled into himself, trembling. The staff at Helen Woodward had seen fear and sorrow before, but something about Toby's resigned posture was especially heart-wrenching. It was as though he'd decided there was nothing left to hope for. Little did Toby realize that in the kennel just across from him, a watchful pair of green feline eyes had been quietly studying him. Willow was a lithe tabby cat who had her own history of hardship. She'd arrived with a matted coat and an infected wound, likely from life on the streets. Yet Willow possessed a spark of curiosity that refused to be extinguished. Each morning, after the staff cleaned her enclosure, Willow perched by the gate, peering across at the disoriented dog. At first, Toby sensed little but the constant swirl of shelter noises, a cacophony of yips, meows, and the clang of metal doors. Every so often, a faint mew would rise above the din. Toby didn't realize it came from the cat observing him. His heart pounded in that lonely darkness, half expecting the next set of footsteps to lead him away forever. He'd learned not to expect kindness or comfort. What would be the point? But Toby's story was only just beginning, and so was Willow's. In the days ahead, their paths would intertwine. Chance, or perhaps something more profound, would forge a bond between them, one that would challenge everything Toby believed about his own limitations. Willow had never been one for timidity. Even at the shelter where she arrived injured, she'd greeted her rescuers with cautious headbutts and a purr that vibrated with gratitude. During her recovery at Helen Woodward, she charmed everyone, from the veterinarians who treated her to the volunteers who meticulously combed her fur to remove painful tangles. Now, mostly healed, Willow found life in a kennel unbearably dull. She needed stimulation, some puzzle to solve or a friend to soothe. On a crisp morning, as a volunteer named Maria walked past the cat enclosures to open the dog ward, Willow's ears twitched. Across the aisle, Toby had lifted his head, as though listening intently for something or someone. Blind though he was, Toby's other senses had sharpened. He'd often tilt his head to catch the myriad scents drifting through the building. Disinfectant, wet dog fur, old kibble, and occasionally a faint fragrance of lavender from a volunteer's perfume. Willow meowed softly. Toby's ears perked. He stood up, wobbling slightly as he navigated the walls of his kennel. The expression on his muzzle was one of longing, like a creature searching for the faintest glimmer of hope in the void. Maria noticed the subtle exchange. She watched Willow press her small pink nose to the bars of her enclosure, mewling again. On Toby's side, his posture shifted from resigned fear to something almost curious. Maria approached Willow and scratched under her chin, sending her into a wave of purring bliss. Yet Willow's gaze remained locked on Toby. With gentle hands, Maria unlatched Willow's enclosure, holding the cat in her arms. Willow meowed more insistently now, pawing the air in Toby's direction. Maria's heart ached. "You want to see the dog, don't you?" she murmured, stroking Willow's ears. For safety reasons, mixing a cat and an unfamiliar dog wasn't typically allowed, especially in a shelter setting. But Toby was calm, and Willow was determined. Maria walked slowly toward Toby's kennel, carefully cradling Willow. Toby sniffed the air. The moment Willow's scent reached him, his tail gave a hesitant wag. Maria knelt beside Toby's pen. "Easy," she whispered. "Let's just meet through the gate." Willow leaned forward, extending a tentative paw between the bars. Toby shrank back at first, startled by this new sensation against his nose. Then he realized it was gentle, warm, something living and curious. He pressed his snout closer, inhaling Willow's unique feline smell. For the first time in weeks, Toby's posture loosened just a bit. Maria smiled, tears pricking her eyes. She couldn't explain why, but it felt like witnessing the start of something extraordinary, a spark of hope in a place that too often felt overshadowed by tragedy. It was as if Willow understood Toby's loneliness and wanted him to know he wasn't alone. While they remained separated by metal bars, the bond began with a simple touch of paw to nose. Days passed, and a quiet routine developed at the shelter. In the early mornings, Maria or another volunteer would feed the cats, then make their way to the dog ward. Toby usually remained curled up, a lonely figure in the corner of his kennel, until Willow appeared. Even from her own enclosure across the aisle, she called out to him with soft meows. Toby responded with subtle tail wags, his clouded eyes flicking in that direction, as though he could see the friend who beckoned. On a breezy Saturday afternoon, the shelter hosted a small adoption event. Families wandered the halls, pausing to admire playful puppies or kittens batting at dangling toys. Toby hardly stirred. Whenever potential adopters walked by, they'd glance at his special needs sign and move on, drawn to easier pets. Willow, too, was largely ignored, her adult status rendering her less popular than the wiggly young kittens. Nonetheless, Willow seemed unbothered by the bustle. She napped contentedly, occasionally raising her head to see if Toby was around. In the late afternoon lull, Maria sat on a bench, exhausted. She'd spent hours greeting families, answering questions, and trying to match animals to forever homes. Her gaze drifted to Toby, whose kennel had seen no visitors that day. She sighed, remembering the veterinarian's words that Toby's blindness might be permanent. He could live a happy life with the right family and environment, but it was an uphill battle to convince casual onlookers. Just then, Willow let out a piercing meow from her enclosure. Maria hurried over, expecting that the cat needed something, but Willow merely placed both front paws on the wire door, eyes locked on Toby, who was lying forlornly on the opposite side. A wave of pity and admiration washed over Maria. "You're worried about him, aren't you?" she whispered, gently stroking Willow's forehead. For Willow and Toby, the sense of companionship deepened, even though they'd hardly had direct contact. Their friendship existed in subtle exchanges, shared vocalizations, the rustle of movement, the intangible empathy that comes from understanding another's loneliness. Many animals in shelters keep to themselves, but these two seemed magnetized, as if each found comfort in the mere presence of the other. That evening, after the public visitors had gone, Maria decided to try something brave. She retrieved Willow from her enclosure and brought her into Toby's pen, carefully assessing Toby's reaction. He stiffened, unsure what was happening. Then Willow approached, slow and confident, her tail held high like a flag of peace. A quiet hush fell as the cat and the dog sniffed one another. Toby tensed when Willow brushed her whiskers against his side. but her gentle, unthreatening manner coaxed him to relax. Maria held her breath. This was either going to be a heartwarming moment or a disaster. Then, almost unbelievably, Willow began rubbing her cheek along Toby's flank, purring loudly. Toby's ears perked, and a tentative wag rippled through his tail. Maria's eyes welled with tears. For the first time since he'd arrived, Toby seemed genuinely receptive. He even leaned toward Willow, letting her guide him in a slow circle around the kennel. It was as if Willow had taken on the role of a seeing-eye cat, using her body language and purrs to help Toby navigate his small world. In that tender moment, everything changed. Hope blossomed in Toby's chest like a single candle flame in a vast, dark room. He wasn't alone. While Toby's spirits began to lift under Willow's calming influence, his journey was far from simple. His past traumas clung to him like a stubborn fog. Even the sound of footsteps echoing too close would cause him to cower. If a volunteer approached too quickly or spoke too loudly, Toby would tremble, fearing an unknown threat in the darkness. Though Toby's body had grown to a sturdy size, his heart was fragile, easily spooked by sudden changes in his environment. Willow, meanwhile, had her own demons to conquer. She'd endured street life where every day presented new dangers, from busy roads to territorial strays to scarcity of food. Certain loud noises or aggressive barking from other dogs caused Willow to freeze. But when it came to Toby, Willow's innate nurturing instincts surfaced. She'd gently nudge him when he needed reassurance or curl up by his side to keep him grounded, purring like a lullaby to chase away his anxiety. One afternoon, Dr. Linda Martin, one of the vets at Helen Woodward, arrived to examine Toby. She wanted to rule out any lingering infections or treatable conditions that might improve his eyesight. Toby sensed the presence of strangers and backed away, head lowered in dread. Willow, perched on a cat tree near the exam table, gave a short, imploring meow. The staff interpreted it as a plea for calm. With a reassuring hand on Toby's scruff, Dr. Martin murmured soft encouragements. "It's okay, buddy. We won't hurt you." Willow meowed again, jumping onto a low stool to be closer to Toby's side. Toby, quivering, cautiously sniffed Dr. Martin's glove. The faint smell of antiseptic mixed with the kind human's voice convinced Toby to endure the exam. Unfortunately, Dr. Martin's tests confirmed that Toby's blindness was irreversible. Scar tissue and degenerative changes in his eyes precluded any chance of surgical correction. Although the news was heartbreaking, the staff at Helen Woodward remained steadfast. Toby could still lead a fulfilling life with proper care and training. "Let's not give up on him," Dr. Martin said to Maria after the exam. "We can teach him to navigate using scents and textures. He might even learn from the guidance of another animal, like Willow." She gave a warm smile, recalling the cat's nurturing behavior. By the time the sun set that evening, Toby lay in his kennel, Willow tucked against his flank. Through the bars of the enclosure, the hallway lights cast fuzzy shapes that Toby couldn't discern. Yet in his darkness he felt a comforting purr vibrating against his ribs. The shadows of the past lingered, but for the first time, Toby sensed a path forward, one that didn't end in surrender. Encouraged by Toby's blossoming bond with Willow, the shelter staff decided to introduce a brief, supervised pairing where both animals could roam a safe playroom together. The area was enclosed with padded floors and minimal obstacles, perfect for a blind dog to explore. Colorful cat towers lined one wall. Against the opposite wall sat a few rubber chew toys for dogs, and in the middle lay a large padded mat. Everything was arranged with Toby's disability in mind. No sharp edges, no sudden drop-offs. When Maria brought Toby inside on a leash, he froze momentarily. The unfamiliar space bristled with an overload of new smells. But then Willow bounded in, tail swishing like a friendly flag. She circled Toby, nuzzling his snout. The tension in Toby's body eased as he recognized her comforting scent. Step by trembling step, Toby ventured farther into the playroom, Willow guiding him. A volunteer had attached small bells to Willow's collar, so Toby could track her movements by sound. It was an ingenious solution. Toby's large, clouded eyes couldn't see the plush toys scattered around, but he could follow the jingle as Willow trotted from one corner of the playroom to the other. Occasionally, Willow would stop and meow, waiting for Toby to catch up. It was as though she'd taken on the role of a sighted guide, cheerfully ensuring her canine friend didn't stumble or lose heart. Dr. Martin observed from behind a glass window, smiling at the remarkable synergy unfolding before her eyes. "This is incredible," she whispered. "I've seen service cats once in a blue moon, but never like this." Toby's progress was slow but determined. At one point, Willow hopped onto a low platform, the bells chiming. Toby angled his ears, sniffing the air. After a few attempts, he placed his front paws on the platform, pulling himself up. Willow gently pressed her furry cheek against Toby's, as though saying, "You've got this." A ripple of pride coursed through Toby. Something inside him awakened, a realization that his blindness did not define his entire existence. He could still move freely, still experience joy, still share a friendship that transcended species. After a half-hour session, Toby returned to his kennel exhausted, panting but with a faint wag in his tail that seemed to say, "I did it." And so began a daily routine of these guided play sessions. Each time, Toby grew bolder, trusting his nose, ears, and Willow's bell-laden collar to maneuver around the space. Willow relished her new role. She'd prance ahead, tail swishing, occasionally glancing back to ensure Toby was following. In these playful lessons, Toby discovered a world he had once believed was lost forever. As Toby's confidence grew, the staff at Helen Woodward Animal Center considered the next step: training sessions to prepare Toby for life outside the shelter. Volunteers introduced him to basic commands tailored for blind dogs. Soft words, forward, stop, left, right, became signals Toby learned to trust. Meanwhile, Willow was never far, her gentle purrs and jingling collar providing a kind of emotional anchor for him. Still, Toby faced moments that triggered his old fears. On an overcast afternoon, a thunderclap rattled the shelter's windows. Toby immediately bolted under a table, whining, his entire body shaking uncontrollably. Willow was in a nearby cat tower. Sensing Toby's panic, she sprang down and scampered to him, pressing her body close. Though Toby couldn't see her, he felt her comforting presence, and his tremors subsided to a shaky breath. It wasn't just storms that challenged Toby. The sound of an aggressive dog barking behind a closed door made him cower. Even a tall stranger with a booming voice could send Toby into a spiral of dread. But each time, Willow found ways, be it a soft meow or a gentle rub, to remind Toby that he wasn't alone, that he could withstand the noise and tension. Word of this unlikely duo spread through the shelter's corridors, reaching staff and volunteers alike. A few curious visitors came specifically to see the seeing eye cat. Videos captured by volunteers, of Willow guiding Toby around a padded room, or of Toby sniffing the air for Willow's jingle bells, went semi-viral on local social media. Comments poured in. "I never knew cats could do that. Such an amazing bond. Someone adopt them together." Indeed, the staff began to realize that separating Toby and Willow might be crueler than any of them intended. But adopting two special animals, one blind dog and one adult cat, was no easy task. Even so, hope persisted that the right person or family would recognize their bond and see it for the rare treasure it was. Maria, who had been Toby's and Willow's steadfast advocate, decided to create a special adoption profile. She snapped pictures of them together. Toby's cloudy gaze turned toward Willow's face, and Willow nuzzling him lovingly. She wrote a heartfelt description. Toby and Willow, a pair of unbreakable spirits. Meet Toby, a courageous blind dog who navigates the world with the help of his best friend Willow. A gentle cat who guides him with tender purrs and soft jingles. They are a bonded pair seeking a patient, loving home. They've overcome countless hardships and are ready to share their remarkable love with the right adopter. If you believe in second chances and the extraordinary power of friendship, come meet Toby and Willow. Maria posted the description on the center's website and social media pages, praying that someone, somewhere, would open their heart to this improbable duo. Weeks passed, and despite a flurry of social media attention, Toby and Willow remained unadopted. Families visited, charmed by the videos, but when faced with the real-life responsibilities of caring for a blind dog and a cat, they hesitated. Shelter life pressed on. Toby continued his training, Willow continued her watchful guidance, and the staff renewed their commitment to see them find a home. Then, one fateful Tuesday, an older woman named Esther arrived with her teenage granddaughter, Sophie. Esther had recently lost her senior cat to old age, and Sophie's dog had passed away the year before from cancer. The grandmother-granddaughter duo visited the Helen Woodward Animal Center in hopes of finding someone who needs us as much as we need them, as Esther put it. They wandered past rows of adoptable dogs and cats, pausing occasionally to greet wagging tails and playful paws. Yet none of the animals seemed to click with them on a deeper level. A volunteer named James guided them to Toby and Willow's kennels, explaining their extraordinary bond. As soon as Sophie saw Toby's tentative sniff toward Willow's jingling collar, her eyes lit up. Esther wore a contemplative expression, but her lips formed a gentle smile. "Oh, sweetheart," Esther said to Sophie, "that's something you don't see every day." Maria offered to introduce them in the playroom where Toby was most comfortable. Willow, wearing her bell-adorned collar, pranced around Toby, who listened intently for her cues. Sophie knelt on the padded floor, calling softly. Toby's ears perked, and he approached with caution, guided by Willow's bells. When Toby found Sophie's outstretched hand, he sniffed curiously. Sensing kindness, he rubbed his muzzle against her palm. Sophie gasped, tears filling her eyes. "He trusts me," she whispered, voice trembling. "He doesn't even know me yet, but he trusts me." Esther joined them on the floor. Willow, never one to miss an opportunity for affection, hopped onto Esther's lap, nuzzling her. A warm, rich purr broke the silence of the room. Esther stroked Willow's soft fur, murmuring, "Such a sweet girl." As the minutes turned into an hour, it became clear that something profound was happening. Toby, guided by Willow, navigated between Sophie and Esther, accepting gentle petting. He leaned his head into Sophie's arm, letting out a soft sigh. Willow settled comfortably, half on Esther's knee, half draped over Sophie's, as though she'd decided that these humans were safe. Maria and James exchanged hopeful glances from across the room. Neither wanted to jinx it, but they sensed a perfect match unfolding. By the time Esther and Sophie stood to leave, tears glistened in both their eyes. Sophie hugged Toby gently around his neck. "We'll be back soon," she promised. 3 days later, they returned with pet carriers, harnesses, and a trunk full of supplies. Esther completed the adoption paperwork, smiling through a film of tears as she did. The staff and volunteers gathered around, snapping pictures and cheering. "Thank you," Maria whispered, handing Toby's leash to Sophie and Willow's carrier to Esther. "You won't regret this. They're amazing." The blind dog and his seeing-eye cat were going home, together. The transition to Esther and Sophie's household was not without challenges. Toby needed time to adapt to the layout of the house. They used scented markers on doorways and placed textured mats near steps to help Toby identify different zones. Willow quickly took to perching on the windowsill, meowing or rattling her bells when Toby wandered too far. In a sense, their small home became an obstacle course for Toby to master, with Willow as his indispensable guide. Sophie, whose heart brimmed with compassion, spent hours on the floor, encouraging Toby to explore one room at a time. Esther posted a large sign on the front door, "Please don't startle our blind dog," to remind visitors of Toby's condition. Family and friends marveled at the dog-cat duo. Many arrived expecting to see tension or chaos, but instead they witnessed something poignant: Toby's unwavering trust in Willow and Willow's gentle leadership. One afternoon, a friend of Sophie's knocked on the door unexpectedly. Toby startled, bumping into a side table, sending a framed photograph to the floor. Willow rushed over, rubbing against Toby's legs in reassurance. Sophie's friend, initially stunned, picked up the frame and apologized profusely. No harm done. The glass hadn't even cracked. But Toby was shaken, panting from the scare. It was Willow's calm that soothed him. She guided him to his favorite dog bed in the living room. Sophie scratched his ears, repeating the comforting words she'd learned from the shelter staff. "Forward, Toby. It's okay. Good boy." Slowly, Toby settled, leaning into Sophie's touch. Day by day, Toby's stride became more confident. He could locate his water bowl without hesitation, navigate the furniture, and even find the back door to the yard by following the subtle scents and Willow's jingles. Watching Toby flourish, Sophie's eyes shone with pride. She too seemed to grow. Her sense of responsibility, her patience, and her capacity to love unconditionally expanded in tandem with Toby's progress. Even Esther, in her twilight years, felt a spark of renewed purpose. She spent her evenings reading by the fireplace, Willow curled in her lap and Toby at her feet. A serene hush filled the room, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the soft rumble of Willow's purr. In those quiet moments, the line between cat and dog, young and old, sighted and blind, blurred. What remained was a shared sense of belonging, of having found a place in the world where they were truly accepted, flaws and all. 6 months after their adoption, Toby and Willow returned to the Helen Woodward Animal Center as guests of honor for an event highlighting success stories. Maria and James nearly wept at the sight of Toby confidently walking alongside Willow, jingling collar in place. Toby's tail wagged in a slow, happy rhythm, and though his eyes saw nothing, the expression on his face conveyed profound contentment. It was a celebration of resilience, connection, and the remarkable power of personal growth. Toby had been ready to give up in a dark, lonely kennel until one determined cat reached out a paw and showed him that love can conquer even the deepest of shadows. Thank you for following Toby and Willow on their beautiful journey from hopelessness to a life brimming with love. We witnessed how a blind dog found his way, literally and emotionally, through the gentle guidance of a steadfast cat. Their story demonstrates that sometimes the bonds we form defy expectations, transcending barriers we once believed insurmountable. If Toby and Willow's tale of resilience, connection, and personal growth touched your heart, please click the like button. Share this story with friends who need a reminder of the healing power of unconditional love. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspirational stories that celebrate the unbreakable spirit of animals and humans alike. Your support enables us to continue shining a light on the transformations that happen when caring souls come together. Together, let's keep sharing hope, one tail wag and purr at a time.